You can see it laid down nice and smooth. We got no tiger striping, modeling, whatever you want to call it. Metallics flowed out real even, which makes it possible for the clear to lay real flat. What's going on, YouTube? Today, we are going to explain how to spray a metallic. Funny story, I made a whole video on how to spray base coat, and I recorded it vertically on my phone, so I can't even use it. I will make a video on how to spray base coat, but since I got a metallic car in here and we got a lot of stuff, a whole front end we're painting, I figured it's a good opportunity to go over how to spray metallics. Okay, so real quick, before we get in the booth, don't click off the video. This is important. The very first thing you're gonna wanna look for, on any paint job, but especially your metallics, you wanna go over every panel you're painting and make sure that there are no scratches, like deep scratches. Even scratches that you would normally base over with a metallic, you can't. It has no body, it's all metallics. So while black or white or any other color that's solid without metallics would fill it in, metallic ain't gonna do it. It's not gonna fill it in. And if you don't take care of it before you start laying base, you're just gonna have to sand it down and go back and do it over. So I wanted to mention that because it's important. Okay, so there are two common problems that you'll run into when you're spraying a metallic. The first one is what I call sand piling. Sand piling happens when the metallics kind of pile up from spraying it too dry. And I think the reason why that happens is because painters go into the booth with it in their head that they're shooting a metallic color and they're gonna have to fight blotchiness or modeling, whatever you wanna call it. So right off the bat, they start trying to control the metallics and get ahead of the blotchiness or the modeling. And that's wrong. The first thing you should do when you get in the booth and you're spraying a metallic is no different than spraying any other color. You wanna spray it wet. Is it gonna come out blotchy? Probably. Is it gonna come out smooth? Definitely. And that's what you should be worried about. And you're gonna get coverage also. That's what you should be worried about in your first coat. Getting coverage and it being smooth. Don't worry about how the metallics lay yet. You have 2 more coats to fix that. So here we go. I'll show you guys how I shoot the first coat. So you saw there, I kind of laid this how I would lay any other color on my first coat, wet. I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'm gonna show you guys how it looks. Usually you'll see some modeling, tiger striping, whatever you want to call it after the first coat when you spray a metallic wet like this, but again, it's not something to worry about. All right, while we let that coat dry, just to reiterate what I said in there, that first coat, you're not worried about the blotchiness. The first initial thing you have to worry about is sand piling, because once that happens, it's real hard to straighten out. You kind of got to go back and start all over from the beginning, because you either got to sand it down, or you have to sand it down and put blender, or you have to put blender, and it just makes the job take twice as long. So the first thing you're fighting is sand piling. To avoid sand piling, we spray wet. Now our second coat, we're gonna go in there, we're gonna spray wet again, but we're gonna back down the pressure a little bit. So it's gonna come out a little dry, but it's still gonna be wet. It'll probably be, I would call it like a 3/4 coat. It'll still be wet, but now we're lowering the pressure a little bit, and now we're starting to consider how those metallics are gonna lay. All right, so here's how we look after our first coat. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up, but it is blotchy. It is stripy, which will usually happen when you lay a metallic wet like that. Let me switch hands. I'm going to show you guys how to lay that second coat now. Another important thing is when you're spraying a metallic, really pay attention to your overlaps because they will impact the finish. So what we did on this coat, we still went wet, but we lowered our pressure just a touch and backed the gun up just a touch. And that's exactly what we're gonna do on the third coat as well, our final coat, which is our drop coat. Now, after our drop coat, if we still have issues, there are other things that we can do to get this to lay perfect. If we have to do them, I'll show you guys how to do them. If not, I'll just kind of verbally walk you through them. Okay, so you can see 2 coats in. We still have a little bit of blotchiness going on. A little bit of tiger striping going on. But we're not really concerned about that. Well, we haven't been up until this point. Now we are. So on this last coat, what we're gonna do, we're going to lower our pressure even more, and we're gonna back the gun up about another 2 inches. Another thing I wanna mention on the last coat, because now on this coat, we are worried about the orientation of the metallic. So I wanna make sure at the end, if I'm painting my fenders in this direction, I wanna paint the hood where it meets the top of that fender in the same direction. So while I might go like this on my first pass, I will end going this way. This way, the metallics are orientated in the same direction on the hood and on the top of the fender. That's gonna help my color match. I should also mention, you have to move a lot slower on this last coat. You can already see how much we straightened out any issues that we might have had. Just one light drop coat is all it takes to straighten it out. Okay, so we just dropped our last coat down on there. It looks way better. I mean, in some cases, I probably would just clear that, but I see a little something. So for the sake of the video, I'm gonna go ahead and do one more drop coat. And there's 2 ways you can go about this. You can either over reduce your remaining color. I personally don't like doing that because it does affect the actual color, how it looks, very, very, very slightly. So you could get away with it, and it definitely does work. Other way you could go about it is by adding clear additive. So I went over this in my how to blend metallics. That's why I'm not showing you guys a blend on the door, because there's a whole nother video on that. But basically, you take your clear additive. So for EnviroBase, it's 490. For LumaBase, which is our solvent line that we use, it's L2200. It's just a base coat additive. It's clear. That's going to add some more body to your color, and it's going to make it a lot easier to have it lay evenly. Big thing. I should have mentioned this in the beginning of the video. Make sure you give it time to flash off. With metallics, even if it looks good, if it's not dry and you clear it, all of a sudden now it's become blotchy and you think, oh man, I didn't spray the metallics right. You probably did. You might have. If you watch this video, you probably did. But you didn't let something dry and then you just kept going on top of it. It could have been your sealer, could have been your first or second wet coat. If you don't let these dry, even if you lay them perfectly, when you put the clear on, you're going to see blotchiness. I'm going to bring you guys in there. I'm going to do my clear additive trick. If you do choose to reduce it by 5%, throw a drop coat on there, and you should be good to go. For this, I usually add 10% clear additive, and then I reduce the additive by 30%, just like any other color. So we'll do this now, our last drop coat. So we did 2 wet, 2 drop. Sometimes that's what you have to do. So this is how it looks after our first drop coat. You can see any blotchiness, modeling, tiger striping, whatever you want to call it, is practically gone. But like I said, we just, I added the clear additive and reduced that by 30%. You could also just reduce your color. I like to start by 5% or 10%, whatever you prefer. And then you just basically do another drop coat. So I'm gonna do that now. Not gonna make you guys watch me do the same thing I just did. Lower pressure, back the gun up, move real slow. Okay, so this is after our second drop coat. You can see this panel is beautiful. This is how you want your metallics to look before you clear them. No modeling, no tiger striping, and even on my blends, it's smooth as can be. And I did the same thing here that I did on my panels. And again, I have a whole video on blending metallics. So if you want, you go check that out. The last tip I guess I could give you guys is, if you're struggling, you know, if your panels look like this and it still comes out blotchy, personally what I do is I double my flash time after my last coat. So if my drop coat, usually I let it flash off 5 minutes. My last coat, before I clear, I give it 10 minutes. You got to be patient. I mean, that's like one of the biggest things in painting, is you have to be patient. I'll get these things cleared up and then I'll show you guys how they look nice and shiny. Be right back. Here's our finished product. You can see it laid down nice and smooth. We got no tiger striping, modeling, whatever you want to call it. Metallics flowed out real even, which makes it possible for the clear to lay real flat. Here's our hood, because this is the most common panel people have issues with when painting metallics. And this thing came out beautiful. Our blend looks good. If you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I'd be happy to answer them. Any suggestions for me? I'm definitely, you know, I'm not saying I know everything. So if you guys know something I don't know, I encourage you to share it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Have a good day. See you on the next one. Peace.